So, Lisa, what would you say are some of the most significant challenges then in an ERP organizational change effort? I agree with you in general. There's a pretty wide range of success, out in field, out in practice. And that in part really depends on how organizations define success. But even with that, I think most would agree that ERP implementation can be pretty challenging, right? But what would you say are some of the most significant challenges that you've seen throughout your career and in your experience for an ERP organizational change project?
Well, I think the first one we've talked quite a bit about, which was just, the selection process, right? And really making sure you have assistance during that process. You can waste, I think, a great deal of time and effort sort of kicking tires. So putting
Yeah.
some thought into that before you just jump in, right? I think that's really important. I think secondly is just, resource challenges today, right? Everybody already has a day job. Many already have some extra tasks known as that, night job. And then you're like, okay, we're going to start an ERP transformation project. How do you find time for your A players to be critical to the project, but still do their jobs? So we see so many companies really struggle with this. And I think ultimately there's not an easy solution, right? You may need to add more outside resources to staff some areas and then focus on having internal leaders on some of the high impact areas. But I think this is a challenge across the board,
Yeah.
really in many industries today, is making sure that you can get the right team engaged and involved. And as I said, be open to finding, outside resources to help in this effort so that your team doesn't get burnt out.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that I see happen quite a bit is this project paralysis, sort of getting stuck on a specific business process change or, a discussion around a modification. And I think that can cause a lot of delays, especially if people are trying to put in, say, a global core model where they're actually trying to get multiple divisions sort of on board with a new change. And so I think that's where I really do believe it's critical to have that steering committee that's empowered to make changes quickly. And we always recommend, again, that the steering committee also contain executives from both companies, your software, your implementation partners, because we feel that that helps make sure there's transparency and visibility. I personally sit on a number of our larger client steering committees, and it really does help keep honest, open communication, and you're able to resolve things, I think, much quicker before any project ever gets into that orange or red status, right? You're able to jump on things quickly and get those done. And then finally, the only other thing I would mention is I do think companies are struggling with the old model of sort of this 18 to 24 month lengthy project. We do quite a bit of work with private equity and in the industries that we serve. And one of the things that I find really refreshing about the way they sort of think and work is they're like, Lisa, we can't take 6 months to select a company. We
Yeah.
may only own a company for 3 years. And so we need to move quickly. We want to have a short list of software providers that we know fit these specific industries. We want to be able to, have them come in quickly, meet with our teams, do more of a rapid selection process, heavily leveraging obviously references and success, and then quickly get time to value. So maybe doing shorter phases instead of the big, 24-month project. And I do think that projects that are run like that, more with iterative success versus the big bang, can certainly help companies stay motivated and help people stay focused. But regardless, the due diligence still needs to be done.
Yeah, great insight, great points. And I do agree. I think it's such a critical point to be made. And that is the time to value idea, just with the project, with an ERP organizational change project in general, but with the selection as well. And there certainly is a right way to go about an effective selection process. And as you mentioned in your initial response to the question, a lot of organizations could really end up heading down a path that takes a lot of time, money, and effort, and down various rabbit holes trying to figure out what solution to go with. So I agree with you there for sure. And then the resource management piece, we see that probably on every single project. And you're trying to implement an ERP system, which is a significant endeavor for the organization typically. And it doesn't come for free in terms of resources, right? The businesses, they have a business to run, they've got to get product out the door. And then on top of that, you're asking a lot of the stakeholders to take perhaps 20 to 25% of their time on a weekly basis and put it towards an ERP implementation. So that is such a critical factor. And then I also really liked how you had mentioned this idea of iterative. It's kind of an iterative process, and the idea of paralysis by analysis. And I think the way I think about that, Lisa, is sometimes you just got to make sure you're heading in the right direction, but you don't always have to be perfect. You don't always have to have the answer necessarily. So what I mean by that is, when you first start out a project, you may have some people heading north, some east, some west, some south, and that's not good. You want to get everybody where they're heading in the same direction. They're all heading west, and then eventually they're all heading down the same trail, right? So they're aligned, but that takes some time. And I think it's also okay for organizations to understand that when you implement an ERP, it's okay to try some different things. It's okay to use it as a tool for organizational learning. It's okay. You're not going to succeed at everything that you try to implement typically on the first try. You can take a step back, reflect, and say, hey, well, we tried something new here. We took advantage of a new opportunity, didn't quite work. So let's realign and try something different. And I think that for organizations that aren't honest and realistic about that, and they just shoot for constant paralysis by analysis because they want every step to be perfect, I'm not sure that that's being honest. You are listening to the ERP Organizational Change Journal podcast, dedicated to private equity stakeholders, practitioners, and researchers seeking ERP organizational change success.